Good morning. I wanted to make this video this morning to give you guys an idea of what I expect from your guys' graphs, maybe show you guys a couple techniques, but most importantly I wanted to show you guys or give you guys a demonstration on how to graph something accurately. So here's a function that I set up. It's not on any of your guys' homeworks or anything. I came up with it this morning for two reasons. One, this graph actually graphs rather nicely in the window, but at the same time, the points don't come out evenly, which actually helps show you guys some of the techniques that I want to show you on how to best graph. Remember, any graph you do is an estimate. The better your estimate, the better you can work with it. So, first thing I'm going to need is this graphing calculator. It's not the one that I normally use at school, but it's essentially the same. There's only slight differences in how it looks. But I'm going to turn it on and then go up here to the y equals button just so that I can set up my function. So I'll enter it. Y is equal to 0.01 x raised to the fifth minus 0.03 times x raised to the fourth minus 0.5 x raised to the 3 plus x squared plus 4.5x minus 5. Now I don't want to hit graph yet because notice what the question says. The graph says using the standard window. Remember, the standard window runs -10 to 10 on the x side, -10 to 10 on the y side with a scale of 1 for each. So let me hit the window button and I see -10 to 10, scale of 1. -10 to 10, scale of 1. And of course we don't worry about the resolution. Let me hit graph. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay. So there's a couple ways you can get your points. The first way I showed you guys was to hit the trace button. And from there you can move left or right or enter in values. So if I enter in -10, I see -750 is my y. And obviously that's outside the window. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. -750. If I can start entering values, it looks kind of like it comes in somewhere between -7 and -6. So I can put in -6.5 or something. That's fairly close. Plug in -6. Now I'm back in my window. A simpler way to do that would be to check the table. Notice table right here above the graph. So I hit second and table, but that's not where I want to start. And that's not really the increments that I'm going to want for an accurate graph anyway, but I'll get to that. So I can change that in the table set screen, and that's above window. So I'll hit second and the table set, and it shows where I want it to start. I want it to start at -10, because -10 is the last part of my x. And I want to go in increments of 0.5. Remember, these squares are 1/4 of an inch apart. And the ruler that I'm going to use is in standard, so it lines up pretty nicely. So I could probably go up to, let's see, that would be if each one of these tick marks represents 1, because my scale is 1, and this is 1/4 of an inch, I have 4/4 of an inch representing 1 tick mark. So the smallest I could theoretically go would be about 1/4 of a point increments. kind of overkill for right now, so I'm going to make my table in half-point increments. So that would represent 1/8 of an inch, and that would put me right at the center in between the two. Let me set that for 0.5, and then second, and I'll go back to my table. Perfect. But again, 10 is set for -750. So rather than plot or just start entering numbers, I could just scroll down a little bit and I could see -6 is where I come in. And then after that, there's a lot of points. And again, like I said, very few of them, there's a lot of decimals in there. Very few of them are actually rather nice. That's one. But they're not all. In any case, I'm going to go back to my graph, watch it draw again. And then I'll hit trace to start entering some points. So at -6, I can see that it's at 4.64. Zoom back out. There we go. I'll zoom back out, and then I can see that at -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I have to go up, or down, sorry, down 4.64 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to fall somewhere here between -4 and -5. How far? About 0.64. Well, it's too small to gauge there. So I need to, this is where the estimate comes in. 0.64 is roughly about 0.625, which represents 5/8. And I do have 1/8-inch increments on my calculator, so I could, or about 1/8 of a point. So I could 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this would be -4.5. That would be -4 3/4. Zoom back in so you can see that. The 2, 3, 4. There's -4.5. There's -4 3/4, which is what I said, I could go 1/4 point increments. But as far as visualizing, I know that 5/8 is halfway between 1/2 and 3/4. So I could put a mark right there. So that would be about -4 5/8. The other way to have done that is to use the little tick marks on the calculator, or on the calculator, the little tick marks on the ruler. Each of these tick marks is a certain, I think my focus is off a little bit. Is that better? Okay. Each of these tick marks shows how far we are. So one at the half, that tick mark is 1/4 of an inch long. And then each one of these changes in 1/16 of an inch increments up to this one, which is another 1/4 of an inch. So if I go there, I can see by using the 2 tick mark, or the full inch tick mark, I had put it at the same place I had shown my 5/8 mark to be. And this is something you just pick up with practice. After a while, you become able to see, okay, if I want 7/8, then I need to line up these tick marks. And if I line them all up, then I know I have a straight line anyway. So that's just something that comes with practice, but it's a very useful technique, and it's one that obviously I still use to this day. So anyway, -6 is going to give me 4.64. Let me do whole numbers for now, so you can kind of flesh out the idea, because we may not always need half-point increments. If I plug in -5, I can see the point I need is +10. Well, that's convenient. So if I look, here's my -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go up 10 to the top of the window. That is a very wide gap between this point and this point. So yes, I probably need something in between the two so that I don't, because I mean, does it go steep this way and curve in, or is it doing, you don't know what it's doing in between. So I can pick a point halfway in between and I'll enter -5.5. And that tells me 5.9. It's a little bit less than 6. So I'm just going to go up here. Here's 6. I know because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 back from 10. And then halfway in between, there's -5.5. And I'm just going to move down a tiny, tiny bit. Right there. 0.9 is a small bit below 6, or 5.9 is a small bit below 6, so I'm going to put my point there, and it's easier to see there. I might even need quarter point increments, but let's see. We don't know how fine we have to get in until we do the rest of the graph. So let's check out -4. -4 is about 7. So that's a lot closer. 7.08. The closest fraction to that is about 1/12. 1/12 is not on there. 1/16 is about 0.06, but that's cutting it a little too fine. I mean, 1/16 of a point would represent a 32nd of an inch on my ruler. I'm not going to go that fine. So I'm just going to say a tiny bit above 7. I mean, when your scale is this small, you can afford to be that close. So at -4, 1, 2, 3, 4 back, I'm going to be a tiny, tiny bit above 7. Now, the gap between, or the change in y between this point and this point was huge. So I probably need a bunch of points in between in order to fine-tune how it goes. Here to here is a lot smaller, so I probably only need halfway in between. Let me, in order to avoid wasting your time on the video, let me plot some more of these points. I'm going to plot the rest of the whole numbers, okay? Okay, I wanted to come back for a second because I got to -5 here, or +5, which was at -7.5, which I did as a halfway in between -7 and -8 by lining up the whole number marks as I did before. And then when I put in 6, I saw that it's -11.12. So about an eighth of the point down from -11. Of course, -11 is off my scale. If I hit the graph button, you can see there's that little gap there. But I don't want to mess up this line in between by just not plotting it. So what I want to do, go back to 6, is I want to plot it anyway. I don't plan to draw down that far, but I also want to have the point for reference on there. So I'm going to come down about an eighth of a, about 0.1, about an eighth of a square to be right there. Again, my graph should cut off here because I'm trying to reproduce the window. But by having this on here, I can see how the graph is supposed to go. So even if I don't actually do that, it suits my needs to plot it anyway. Remember what I said, you can never have too many. At 7, it's 0.04, which is right there. Tiny bit above 0. And I use this gel point so that I can just set the point there and the ink will show up. There's another point back here at positive 1. It comes out to like negative 0.02 or something. I put in positive 1. It comes out to, yeah, negative 0.02. So it's like right there at 0. Let's see. We're getting 8, 40, 43.8. Let's see what I did. I'm way off my scale anyway. Because 8 is right there, and that's, I forgot where I was. I was at 7. Oh no, I did it right. I was at 7 here. 7 gave me 0.04, and then 8 goes way off. So I'm not going to try to plot that because that's way off the page. The 43 point something is way off the page. So this is another one where I will need some points in between. So let me see, 7.5. Still off the scale. I could put it way up here, but it's going to be way up here in the directions. And if I did 16, that would be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 for 7.5. That's still pretty high. So 7 1/4 on there. 7 1/4 is about slightly above 7. So slightly above 7. 7 1/4. Why am I setting my ruler up? Just slightly above 7. Well, I need it to show where my quarter is. Slightly above 7. Okay, now look. I know it's going to go off my scale there, so I don't have to do any of the rest of the points. No, I'm not done yet, Julia. Julia. Sorry. Okay, I can see that my points are still pretty well scattered. I mean, I have a good idea of here what it's going to look like. But the points are still pretty well scattered. I can kind of follow, but there's no way in the world I'm making a decent graph with a point spread like this. So I'm going to pick some points in between. So this was wide, so I'm going to do quarter points. So this was negative 6, this was negative 5.5, let me do negative 5.75. Negative 5.75 tells me it's about 1.59. So about a little over halfway between positive 1 and positive 2. So I'll line it up with my marks. Remember, halfway is at the inch mark on this particular ruler. And then there's my quarter of a point increment. Slightly above half. Just like that. See, now I can see kind of fleshes out so that I don't accidentally hang out too far here and then I get a little wobbliness here. Let me put in negative 5.25. And one of the questions I get asked is, how do you know what x's to put in? Or, I mean, how do you know what's in between the two? Well, think about it. I have negative 5.5 here. Grab a scrap piece of paper. I have negative 5.5 here, negative 5.5 here, and I have negative 5 here. What's halfway in between? This is negative 5. This is negative 5 and a half. What's halfway between no fraction and a half? Well, that's a quarter. So negative 5 and a quarter is what I picked. So when I'm putting this in, I don't actually have to put in negative 5.25. I could say negative 5 and 1/4, and it will, oh, negative 5 minus a quarter. Sorry. Mr. Fletcher made a mistake. At negative 5 and a quarter, it's 8.61. So, a little bit above 8.5. So, I can see the rate that it's slowing down. Right there. So, I'm not going to make it pointy, because it's not pointy. I mean, if you look at the graph, it's not pointy at all. It's, well, let me show you the window. Or I could zoom in with a box. Zoom in with a box. There. Go. There. That didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. But either way, you see that it's not pointy. Go back to my standard graph. And I'll start picking some more points. I am going to do the halfway in between points. And I will resume the video right after I do that. Okay. I'm a lot closer now than I was before. Let's see, I can follow it here. A couple things I wanted to point out. The fact that that at this is negative 4.5, it was 9.8. So that actually bears out why the zoom box did not show the top of it like I was going to. I had gone under the assumption that maybe some of you guys do, that 10 was the maximum here. Because when I look at the graph, it looks like 10 is the maximum. I don't see any. But I forgot something that I tell you guys, or I told you guys in the beginning. Don't be fooled by problems with pixelation. If I set my window so that I go from negative 6 1/4 to negative 5.25, and then I set my minimum at 9, I should have a very small box. Oh, I'm outside my window anyway. I'm outside where I wanted to be anyway. So that should be negative 5.25 to negative 4.25. Just for a few more minutes, Julia. So try this again. There we go. If I top out at 10, I see that I missed the top of that completely. So I had made an invalid assumption that I told you guys not to make, so shame on me. The maximum is actually somewhere in between. So when you're drawing this, you actually have to go a tiny bit above. Where is that maximum? Not sure. Let me zoom in to my previous. I'll try to zoom out a little bit. Starting from, let's say right there. See? And I'll trace it again, and I'll move a little bit. There's my max. Max is about 10.33, and it occurs at negative 4.78, so about negative 4 3/4. So let me plug in negative 4.75 because that's about as close as I can get with my ruler. 10.32, pretty close. So let me plug that point in right now. About a third of the way up the box. And a quarter goes right there. So there's my maximum, and that's how I keep from making it pointy. There's my maximum. Okay. But in any event, look at how close I've gotten so far. There's still a gap there, so I might need quarter points for that. Look at this here. These, move it a little bit. These are really close here, so that means I've probably got a minimum somewhere between, what's this, -1 and -1.5. So if I put in, let me zoom back to my standard window. Hit trace. I'll plug in -1.25. That tells me that it's about -8.18. So about -8 3/16. Close enough to 8 1/4 that it won't mean much resolution-wise. So about there. I'll put a point right there to show that's my minimum. That way I don't make the same mistake of assuming that that's my point. In any case, it goes up here, and I might need something to flesh that out there. Comes up and down, and then I come across two things that I wanted to point out. See that little X there? When I put that point at 0.04, it was for x equals 7. Well, this is x equals 6 if you didn't notice earlier. If you did notice that I made a mistake earlier, good for you. So I put an X through that point so that I don't draw my curve through it, and then I put the point where it's supposed to be. Same thing I did here when I tried to do 5.5. I put it here when it really should. When it really should have gone here. And I noticed that because, I mean, it didn't make sense that I was going from here down to here, up to here, back to here, and that's when I said, wait a second, what did I do wrong? So that's the other reason I do points, even though I'm doing them in pen. I do points so that I'm not screwing it up the whole time. So I'm going to pause it one more time, and I'm going to do quarter point increments for the stuff in between. This is overkill, but then again, like I said in the beginning, this graph is more involved than anything I'm going to give you guys, but it shows the techniques. So you can master them for this, then you can master them for anything we're going to do in class. So let me pause it one more time, and I'll do those in betweens. Okay. I did all of the quarter point increments. So starting back here, and actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to say, because this point here comes back here, and I knew that even at a quarter point it was off the scale, I'm going to put this mark way down here so that I know not to reach that far. Anyway, I've got quarter point increments because that's the accuracy of my ruler. And it's a compromise between the accuracy of the ruler and the accuracy of the graphing paper. But those are my quarter point increments, and that's about as close as I can come to getting all the points. But you see, the more points I put, the more fleshed out the picture looks. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start from the curves. If pointies are your problem, then make yourself a little mark there so that you don't start directly from the point. But I'm going to come up with a smooth curve. That's the key there. The points are just estimates, remember. The whole point is to make this a smooth curve using those dots as a guideline. So if I draw this, I'm going to try to look 1 point ahead of where I am at any given time, because it's a natural impulse. Oops. It's a natural impulse that when you look ahead, and something you drivers kind of know, when you look ahead of where you're at, that's where your body tends to go. Or sports people too. You know that as you look in the direction you want to move. See how that, if I were in pencil, I would flesh it out a little more. Why? Because I met my points, but the curve is not so smooth. So I kind of smooth it out a little bit. Isabella, can you turn that down, please? Thank you. If I'm following those guidelines, then my curves should meet at the right angle in the middle. It's hard to tell that that was where I stopped. I'm just going to very slowly connect the dots. Now notice here that the curve changed. It's concave this way, and at some point it becomes concave this way. Those of you who are watching this that are in calculus, we call that an inflection point. We'll get to that in the next unit. For those of you that are in Algebra 2 watching this, don't worry what I just said. No, don't worry about the inflection point. Just know that at some point it changes from bowl down to bowl up. So I need to make the transition so that, since I'm right-handed, I tend to draw concave this way. So I'm not going to try to draw convex this way, because I'll be kind of out of my element, as you will. Oh, about these flat spots right here. If pointiness is your problem, if you draw the flat spots, start from the end of that little tiny line, because that kind of cheats in a little bit of a curve. Notice, especially on the steep ones, I'm not going very fast. I'm trying to maintain my angle, and this is something that just takes practice. Again, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to try going this way, but maybe not, because here is, this is kind of steep, and I don't want to hit that. So, I'm going to cheat. We're going to cheat it a little bit, because this is steep enough that it's pretty close to a line. Hey look, Mr. Fletcher's going to be happy. And then I can do the same thing here, because that's still pretty steep. That's almost the same line, it's only curved in a tiny bit. And I can help you with that so that it doesn't look pointy at the end. If you get it and it looks too angular, you can use your eraser, same way you would in an art class, and kind of smooth out the curve a little bit. And it's a way of cheating the eye. And then I'm going to...
I gotta go with another one.
It's pretty close. And I'm going to connect it like that. You'd never know I didn't draw it freehand. I just wanted to see, if I did it as a line, does it cut through that point there? Pretty darn close. Send it up a little bit. Turn it a tiny bit. Make that other point. Remember again, the points are just estimates, but if our technique was good, they're pretty good estimates. Now, this point is a little bit up from that, so I'm going to kind of bypass the point a tad. Because remember what I said, the point does not rule all. The point is a guideline for this. And the whole point here is to make it a smooth curve. Now, one last thing. I did this. I violated something that I told you guys you probably should not do. I did it because I have experience doing this, but here's the problem. Notice that this is a shallower curve than this one here. It's one of those things that practice takes to get right, and I didn't even notice it because I was focused on the individual points rather than the curve as a whole. So what I wound up doing was I overran the window. Remember, the window runs just like this. If I look at my graph in the calculator, zoom back out, it's pretty darn close. Huh? but I also see that I overran it. So here's what you do. You have an eraser. You can just erase it. I have a pen. I need whiteout. And you know what? I don't have it. So I'm just going to leave it. So I guess that can be an instance of do what I say, not as I do. But anyway, I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I will see you on Monday. Remember, none of your graphs are this hard. I think the hardest you guys have is a cubic, and I made that one so that the numbers came out nicely. But this is where I expect you guys to end up. I don't expect you guys to get there right away, but again, graphing accuracy is important, and it takes a lot of practice to get there. Okay, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Thank you very much.